There are eating habits that stay with us throughout our entire lives. For Helen, 67, and Robert, 72, vegetables have always symbolized health. From their busy working years to their peaceful retirement at a senior living community in the suburbs of California, they maintained a simple habit: every meal must include fresh greens. Doctors, nutritionists, and public health campaigns all taught that eating vegetables is the best thing we can do for our bodies, and Helen and Robert believed that wholeheartedly. But then, something very strange happened one spring evening after a light meal of pea soup, steamed asparagus, and roasted eggplant. Helen tossed and turned all night with bloating and heaviness she had never experienced before. Robert woke up with sharp pain in his toes, a strange, dull, throbbing pain so intense that he had to use a cane to walk out into the yard the next morning. At first, they thought it was just a part of aging, something everyone eventually faces, but as the symptoms became more frequent, Helen and Robert began to wonder, could something in their seemingly healthy meals be causing their bodies to cry out for help? They were not alone. The truth is, after the age of 60, our bodies no longer operate the same way. The digestive system slows down, blood sugar regulation becomes less efficient, and the kidneys and joints grow more vulnerable. And the most surprising part, not all vegetables remain good friends anymore. Some vegetables, once praised as superfoods, can quietly become silent enemies if we do not know how to select, prepare, and eat them properly. In today's journey, let us follow Helen and Robert to discover 10 vegetables that seem harmless but can silently harm our health after the age of 60. And most importantly, how to eat smarter so that every meal continues to be a source of life, not a hidden threat. But before we dive into this list, I have a small message to share. If you are in your 60s or beyond, or if you are caring for a loved one at this stage of life, please take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. We share real-life stories, simple yet powerful nutrition tips, and small daily habits that can help you live longer, stay healthier, and feel happier every single day. Let's build a community together where age is just a number and vitality always shines bright. Thank you for being here with us. Now, let's dive in. The first. Green peas, the sweet trap with a hidden blade. The next morning after that dinner, as she sipped her coffee on the porch, Helen let out a gentle sigh, lightly pressing her hand against her stomach. Robert glanced over at her, his eyes unable to hide the fatigue caused by the persistent throbbing pain in his toes. "Maybe we had too much heavy food last night," Helen said with a reassuring smile, though she was starting to doubt herself. But in reality, the culprit was not a greasy or overly sweet dish. It was something she had trusted her whole life to be harmless. A bowl of fresh green peas. Peas, with their small, sweet, and vibrant appearance, had long been a familiar friend at family meals. They often appeared in soups, salads, and stir-fries, and everyone thought, adding a few peas could only be beneficial. How could it ever be harmful? But what Helen, and so many others after the age of 60, did not realize was that the body had changed. The digestive system was no longer quick enough to efficiently process the starch content in peas. And the high glycemic load of peas caused blood sugar levels to spike just a few hours after eating. Not only that, peas are rich in purines, compounds that when broken down produce uric acid, a key factor in the agonizing gout flare Robert had experienced that morning. Moreover, indigestion, bloating, and abdominal discomfort are silent side effects. At this age, the body produces fewer digestive enzymes, making it harder to handle the resistant starches and lectins in peas. These compounds ferment in the gut, generating gas, causing pain, and sometimes creating a vague, lingering discomfort. Helen had no idea that the small bowl of peas from the night before, despite their sweet exterior, held hidden dangers for those who had crossed the threshold of 60. And peas were only the beginning, because another vegetable, one long celebrated as a symbol of longevity, was also quietly placing a heavy burden on the bodies of older adults. The second. Asparagus. hero or hidden culprit? Helen had always been proud of the fact that she had shifted to eating more superfoods after turning 60. One of the foods she trusted most was asparagus. The vegetable, often praised by health programs as a heart protector and a miracle anti-aging remedy. Every time she went grocery shopping with Robert, Helen never forgot to stop by the produce section to pick out bunches of fresh, dew-kissed asparagus. "The kids say asparagus helps strengthen bones and slows down aging," she would say with a smile, her eyes gleaming with belief. However, after just a few months of adding asparagus to their daily meals, both Helen and Robert began to feel that something was not quite right. Helen often experienced stiffness in her knees, especially in the mornings. Robert noticed that fatigue and dry mouth were becoming more severe, particularly on hot days. At first they blamed the weather, but over time the symptoms became harder to ignore. The truth is, asparagus is not completely harmless, especially for bodies that have begun to age. Asparagus contains a fairly high amount of purines. When ingested, purines break down into uric acid, which can accumulate in the joints, triggering or worsening gout attacks and arthritis. In younger people, a healthy body can balance this out. But for those over 60, like Helen and Robert, any added burden on the joints leaves a noticeable impact. And that is not all. Asparagus is also a powerful, natural diuretic. At first glance, this sounds beneficial, detoxing the body, but for older adults, excessive urination can lead to silent dehydration, dry mouth, dizziness, muscle cramps, and more critically, increased strain on the kidneys. Helen once thought that simply drinking a little more water would be enough, but at this age, the body's thirst signals have weakened. By the time you feel thirsty, you may already be severely dehydrated. What began as a handful of fresh, crisp asparagus in Helen's hands turned out to be hiding risks she had never imagined. And then, during those bright summer days, another seemingly harmless food would quietly continue to challenge their health. The third. Corn, the sweet trap hidden behind every festive meal. The sun-drenched summer days at the senior living community were always filled with laughter, the scent of freshly cut grass, and the sweet aroma of grilled corn on the cob. For Helen and Robert, those picnic days with friends were rare, precious opportunities to savor the simple joys of life and to indulge in flavors that brought back the tastes of their childhood. At a golden, caramelized ear of corn lightly brushed with melting butter. Who could resist? Robert often joked, "One ear of corn won't do any real harm." But after a few summers like that, subtle changes in their bodies began to speak up. Helen felt her stomach become bloated and heavy after every picnic. Robert started to notice sudden waves of exhaustion right after eating, along with bouts of unexpected dizziness. Something was not right. The truth is, corn, as sweet and innocent as it seemed in memory, is not as simple as it appears. First, corn contains a tough cellulose outer layer that an aging digestive system struggles to break down. The consequences: bloating and gas, mild constipation after meals, and for those with digestive issues like Helen, a lingering feeling of heaviness lasting the entire day. But that is not all. Corn also has a high glycemic index. This means the sugars from corn are rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream, causing sudden spikes in blood sugar levels, quickly followed by sharp drops, leaving behind feelings of exhaustion, irritability, and, more dangerously, worsening the silent progression of prediabetes after the age of 60. Robert, who had always been proud of keeping his weight under control, was stunned when his doctor warned him that his blood sugar levels were hovering in the danger zone, and he could not understand why. And that still was not everything. Most commercial corn today, even the freshest-looking ears, is genetically modified, GMO, and sprayed with pesticides like glyphosate. These chemicals, according to many studies, can disrupt gut microbiota, cause chronic inflammation, and damage the kidneys, organs that have already begun to weaken over the years. Helen recalled, with a tinge of sadness, "We ate it. believing it was the most natural food. But it turned out that the sweetness was just a mask hiding hidden dangers. And just when they thought they had learned their lesson, another familiar name, once thought of as a superfood, continued to challenge them. The fourth, mushrooms. The silent toxin filters in the shadows. After the unpleasant experiences with peas, asparagus, and corn, Helen decided to return to nature even more. She began adding fresh mushrooms to her daily meals, from lunchtime salads to evening stir-fries. In Helen's eyes, mushrooms symbolized purity, growing naturally from the earth, rich in nutrients, low in calories, and praised in countless articles as immune-boosting superfoods. Robert had no objections either. He enjoyed the soft, savory texture mushrooms brought to their simple meals. They both believed they were on the right path, until small signs started to appear. Helen felt her stomach become heavier after meals that included mushrooms. Robert, who rarely experienced allergies, suddenly found himself with a mild skin itch and occasional dry coughing spells without any clear cause. At first they did not suspect a thing, but then, during a health seminar at the senior center, they heard a fact that left them stunned. Mushrooms are unlike any other vegetables. They are natural filters, capable of absorbing heavy metals, chemicals, and toxins from the soil they grow in. If mushrooms are cultivated in polluted soil, which unfortunately is quite common in industrial agriculture, toxins such as lead, cadmium, and arsenic can silently accumulate within the mushroom's tissues. When consumed, especially by older adults whose detoxification systems have weakened over time, these heavy metals are not easily eliminated from the body. They gradually build up, little by little, potentially leading to kidney damage, neurological problems, and even a weakened immune system. Moreover, certain types of mushrooms, such as white button mushrooms, contain agarotine, a compound that some studies suggest, when consumed frequently and over long periods, may increase the risk of cancer, particularly if the mushrooms are not thoroughly cooked. Helen whispered to Robert after that seminar, "We thought we were doing something good for our health, but it turns out even the best things require careful choices." From that day forward, whenever choosing mushrooms, Helen and Robert always prioritized organic mushrooms, only ate them thoroughly cooked, and listened to their bodies rather than relying solely on advertisements. But their journey was far from over, because another vegetable, so familiar that it appears in nearly every kitchen, was about to bring an equally harsh surprise. A fifth. Cabbage, green leaves, but not always harmless. One late autumn afternoon, Helen decided to prepare a light dinner for the two of them. She chose a dish familiar from her childhood, a crisp cabbage salad, tossed with a bit of apple cider vinegar and caraway seeds. Cabbage is full of fiber, vitamin C, and low in calories. There's no way this could go wrong, she thought to herself, smiling with satisfaction as she set the colorful salad on the dinner table. Robert happily enjoyed the meal too, believing they were taking the best possible care of their health. But just a few days later, they both began to notice unusual signs. Helen felt an icy coldness in her hands and feet, even though the weather was not particularly cold. Robert started experiencing unexplained fatigue, a lingering sluggishness that lasted from morning until night. At first, they thought it might be due to poor sleep or a change in the weather, but during a routine health check, their doctor raised a possibility they had never considered: a thyroid issue. It turned out that cabbage, along with other cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale, contains a group of natural compounds called goitrogens. When consumed in large amounts, these substances can interfere with iodine absorption, impair thyroid function, and lead to symptoms like fatigue, cold extremities, and unexplained weight gain, all the things Helen and Robert were experiencing. For those over 60, when thyroid activity naturally slows with age, any further disruption can significantly affect quality of life, loss of energy, memory disturbances, increased risk of cardiovascular diseases. Moreover, cabbage also contains raffinose, a complex sugar that older digestive systems struggle to break down, causing bloating, gas, persistent stomach discomfort. Helen recalled, her eyes tinged with sadness. "I thought eating cabbage was the right thing to do, but some things, as we grow older, quietly become burdens for our bodies." From that point on, she and Robert learned to eat cabbage only when thoroughly cooked instead of raw, limit their portions to just a few servings per week, and substitute part of their vegetable intake with easier-to-digest options like boiled spinach or organic lettuce. They realized that food is indeed a source of life, but it must be chosen as carefully as one would choose a companion for a long journey. And this was only half of the story. Because in the world of seemingly harmless vegetables, even more surprises still lie ahead. The sixth. Eggplant, the hidden trigger for joint inflammation. Every Saturday, the senior living community where Helen and Robert lived hosted outdoor barbecue parties. Laughter would echo among blooming flower beds, and the smell of grilled meats and roasted vegetables would swirl through the air, embracing the entire space. One of the most beloved dishes? Grilled eggplant. Helen loved how eggplant absorbed seasonings, tender, rich, and low in calories. Robert enjoyed the slightly charred skin, thinking he was eating something both delicious and healthy. They savored the eggplant with joy, without a hint of worry. But a few days later, Robert began to notice swelling and a dull, persistent ache in his finger joints, the kind of pain he had only ever heard others talk about. Helen, on the other hand, started feeling unusually bloated, despite maintaining a fairly disciplined diet. When they reviewed their recent eating habits, they realized eggplant was the silent culprit. The truth is, eggplant, along with tomatoes, potatoes, and bell peppers, belongs to a plant family called nightshades. This group contains a natural compound called solanine, which plants produce to protect themselves from pests. The problem is that in individuals with sensitive systems, or in those whose immune systems have weakened with age, solanine can trigger inflammatory responses in the body. This leads to increased joint pain, swelling, and muscle stiffness, exactly what Robert was experiencing. Additionally, eggplant is rich in oxalates, compounds that can crystallize into kidney stones if not properly flushed out by the body. People over 60, whose kidney function has naturally begun to decline, are particularly susceptible. And it does not stop there. The eggplant skin and tiny internal seeds are harder to digest compared to softer vegetables, easily causing bloating, gas, stomach discomfort, especially for those with a history of acid reflux, GERD, like Helen. Helen sighed as she recalled, "We thought that the more vegetables we ate, the healthier we would be, but it turns out that at our age, wisdom lies not in quantity, but in careful selection." Now, they have learned to always grill eggplant thoroughly, peel off the skin before cooking, eat only small portions and monitor their body's reactions, and sometimes opt for gentler vegetables like zucchini or yellow squash. But their journey was not over yet. Another familiar food, so deeply rooted in the memories of American childhood, was also hiding a deceptively sweet threat. The seventh. Potatoes, the buttery angel behind a blood sugar mask. Potatoes. Just hearing the name brings back a flood of sweet memories from days long past. For Helen, it was the creamy mashed potatoes her mother would lovingly prepare every Thanksgiving. For Robert, it was the crispy, steaming hot French fries he enjoyed after every childhood soccer game. Even after crossing into their 70s, both of them still kept the habit of adding potatoes to dinner a few times a week, as a small way to hold on to those happy memories. But lately, Robert began to notice feeling drained after meals, sudden sleepiness without any clear reason, and erratic blood sugar levels during routine health checkups. Helen, too, found herself feeling hungry again sooner after eating and struggling to manage her weight even though her portion sizes had not changed much. Was there something they had overlooked? The truth is, while potatoes are rich in potassium, vitamin C, and fiber, they also have an extremely high glycemic index, GI. This means, within minutes of eating potatoes, blood sugar levels spike dramatically, triggering a rush of insulin to cope with the surge, and quickly followed by a blood sugar crash, leaving the eater exhausted, ravenous, and easily caught in a cycle of weight gain, fatigue, sugar cravings. For those over 60, when the body's natural blood sugar regulation declines, these swings are no longer harmless. They place a heavy burden on the pancreas, increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and damage small blood vessels, directly affecting the eyes, kidneys, and peripheral nerves. Robert quietly recalled the golden plates of French fries he had loved so much, not only loaded with starch sugars, but also containing acrylamide, a compound formed when frying at high temperatures, which has been shown to cause inflammation, increase cancer risk, and damage the nervous system. Helen, after reading more about potatoes, sighed softly. It's hard to believe that something once so simple and full of love could quietly harm our bodies this way. But as always, making a change did not mean giving up entirely. Helen and Robert decided to switch from white potatoes to sweet potatoes, a root vegetable richer in fiber, lower in glycemic index, and high in eye-protecting beta-carotene. If they ate potatoes, they would leave the skin on, only boil or lightly roast them, avoiding frying, and control portions, always pairing them with greens and healthy fats to slow sugar absorption. Through these small but meaningful changes, they gradually regained steadier energy levels, better blood sugar control, and most importantly, a sense of empowerment over their health journey. But even vegetables praised as superfoods are not always completely harmless, and one of them was the deep green vegetable Helen had trusted the most. The eighth. Spinach? Superfood or kidney stone trap? After the unpleasant experiences with peas, asparagus, corn, and potatoes, Helen felt the need for a truly safe change. She returned to a vegetable long praised, spinach, the deep green leafy vegetable that health experts never seem to stop celebrating. She began each morning with a spinach smoothie, blended with banana and flax seeds. Simple, natural, nutritious, Helen thought to herself, feeling she was doing something wonderful for her health. But after just a few months, strange signs began to appear. Helen started experiencing dull, persistent lower back pain that became more frequent over time. She also noticed more difficulty with urination, sometimes accompanied by a mild, unexplained discomfort. One morning, after being awakened in the night by a sharp, cramping pain, Helen decided to see a doctor. The result left her stunned: kidney stones. She could hardly believe her ears. How could this happen? She had been eating so healthily. But as the doctor gently explained, everything became clear. Spinach, although rich in vitamin K, magnesium, and powerful antioxidants, also contains extremely high levels of oxalates. Xalates are natural compounds that can bind with calcium in the kidneys, form sharp crystals, leading to kidney stones, urinary tract infections, and severe cramping pain. And for someone over 60 like Helen, when the kidney's filtration and excretion capacity has already begun to decline, the risk becomes even greater. Moreover, excess oxalates can hinder the body's absorption of calcium from foods, causes bone weakening, increase the risk of osteoporosis and fractures, something older adults must avoid at all costs. Helen recalled the days she drank spinach smoothies every morning, a bittersweet look in her eyes. I thought I was building my health, but it turns out I was quietly harming myself. However, as always, Helen did not let disappointment stop her from moving forward. She learned that boiling or steaming spinach significantly reduces its oxalate content. Pairing spinach with naturally calcium-rich foods like yogurt or cheese helps lower the risk of oxalate crystallization. Rotating with lower oxalate greens, such as lettuce, romaine, or arugula, provides a safer variety. These small adjustments helped Helen continue enjoying vibrant green meals, this time smarter and safer. But spinach was not the only leafy green with two faces. Another superstar of the clean eating world, kale, also had secrets not everyone knew. The ninth. Kale can, for healthy vegetable, double-edged sword. After her experiences with spinach, Helen became much more cautious in her food choices. She began searching for safer vegetables, and the first name she heard from health magazines was kale. Kale seemed to be everywhere, from morning green juices to healthy sandwiches. Eat kale every day, they said, and you will live longer and healthier. And Helen, like so many others, believed it. She bought bunches of deep green crisp kale, tossing it into salads, blending it into smoothies, even baking it into chips. Robert, although not particularly fond of it, ate along, thinking he was doing something good for his body. But it did not take long before the familiar signs began to reappear. Helen felt bloated after every meal, and Robert experienced lingering fatigue, sometimes struggling to focus even on simple tasks. Then, during a health checkup, their doctors suggested testing their thyroid function, something neither of them had ever considered before. The results showed that both exhibited mild signs of hypothyroidism despite appearing outwardly healthy. The truth is, kale, like cabbage, is rich in goitrogens. These compounds interfere with iodine absorption, reducing thyroid hormone production, leading to symptoms such as fatigue, brain fog, dry skin, slight weight gain, and cold extremities. Moreover, kale also contains oxalates, similar to spinach, which can increase the risk of kidney stone formation if consumed in large amounts over time. Helen was stunned to realize that although kale was packed with vitamin C, fiber, antioxidants, eating too much of it, especially raw, could bring more harm than benefit, particularly at her and Robert's age. However, as always, the solution was not about extremes. Helen learned that cooking kale by steaming, boiling, or lightly sautéing significantly reduces both goitrogen and oxalate levels. Combining kale with a variety of other vegetables helps diversify the diet, rather than relying on a single vegetable every day. Paying close attention to her own body's signals was more important than following generic health trends. She smiled and said to Robert one evening while they sat reading on the porch, "In the end, we don't need to eat like angels. We just need to eat like people who truly understand themselves." And just when they thought they had found a safe formula, another colorful, seemingly harmless vegetable was about to bring yet another valuable lesson: the tint. Bell peppers, vibrant colors, hidden dangers. Once a week, the senior living community where Helen and Robert resided held a local farmers market. That morning, under the soft golden sunlight, Helen could not resist the vibrant colors of the baskets, overflowing with bell peppers, deep red, bright yellow, and fresh green. Bell peppers are packed with vitamin C, great for the immune system. They'll be perfect in a salad, she thought, without hesitation, placing a few into her basket. That evening, Helen and Robert enjoyed a fresh, crisp salad adorned with slices of sweet, crunchy bell peppers. Everything seemed perfect. Until the next morning. Helen woke up with a bloated, uncomfortable stomach. Robert found that his finger joints felt stiff and mildly painful whenever he clenched his hands. At first, they blamed it on overeating or changing weather. But when these symptoms repeated every time they ate raw bell peppers, Helen began to suspect something more. Once again, the truth emerged. Bell peppers, despite being rich in vitamin C, antioxidants, and fiber, also contain solanine, the same natural compound found in other nightshade vegetables like eggplant, tomatoes, and potatoes. In some people, especially older adults with sensitive immune systems, solanine can silently trigger inflammatory responses in the body, leading to joint pain, mild swelling, and an increase in chronic inflammatory symptoms. Furthermore, bell peppers have thick skins loaded with insoluble fiber, making them harder to digest for seniors whose digestive systems have naturally slowed. This explained the bloating and discomfort Helen experienced. Additionally, some individuals, even those with no prior history of allergies, can develop sensitivities to plant proteins in bell peppers as they age, leading to sinus congestion, mild skin itching, and a lingering sense of low-grade fatigue. Helen sighed, recalling that morning when she tried to soothe her stomach with a cup of ginger tea. Who would have thought that beneath such cheerful colors there was something to be cautious about? However, instead of cutting bell peppers out entirely, Helen and Robert chose a smarter path, lightly roasting or steaming bell peppers before eating to soften the skins and reduce solanine levels. peeling the skins if needed to make digestion easier, carefully observing their bodies after meals to adjust portion sizes accordingly. They realized understanding their bodies mattered more than following any food trend. 10 vegetables, 10 valuable lessons. But more profoundly, Helen and Robert discovered a greater truth about health in later life. Sometimes even the healthiest-seeming things must be approached with mindfulness and understanding, eating wisely and living healthily and longevity. When Helen and Robert first started this journey, they were just like so many of us. They believed that simply eating green vegetables, drinking enough water, and exercising regularly would naturally safeguard their health. But life, as they learned, is far more nuanced than simple formulas. Not every vegetable is harmless. Not every dish is safe just because it was once praised. After going through experiences with Paris, peas, asparagus, corn, mushrooms, cabbage, eggplant, potatoes, spinach, kale, and bell peppers, Helen and Robert came to realize a profound truth. Good health in old age is not just about what we eat. It is about truly understanding what our bodies need. At 60, 70, or even 80, our bodies no longer operate as they once did. Digestion slows down, blood sugar becomes more sensitive, and joints and kidneys grow more vulnerable. What once was a superfood in youth can quietly turn into a silent challenge in older age. But that does not mean we have to live in fear, anxiety, or give up the foods we love. Instead, it means gaining a deeper understanding of what we put into our bodies, preparing foods more wisely, eating with greater selectivity, and listening closely to even the smallest signals from our bodies. Just like Helen and Robert, we can absolutely enjoy the pleasures of food while also protecting our health, as long as we move forward with mindfulness and greater self-love. Because living healthily in old age is not a matter of chance. It is a journey, and every meal, every small choice is a strong, steady step along that path. If today's journey has sparked even a little reflection in you, if there is a vegetable you once trusted only to later discover it no longer suits your body, please share that story with us in the comments below. You never know, a simple story from you could inspire, guide, or comfort someone else who is still searching for their own answers. And if you found this video helpful, please do not hesitate to click like to help spread this information to more people, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so we can continue walking this path together. A little each week, a step each day, moving toward a life of strength, peace, and meaning in our later years. Because living healthfully and happily after 60 is not just a dream, it is something completely within our reach if we move forward with understanding, love, and patience. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this journey. We look forward to seeing you in the next stories. Take good care of yourself and remember, you deserve the best years yet to come.